Having a diversity of interests really, where you can sort of shape what you do according to the opportunities and the timing. That's to me what a bountiful life is, and just of course constantly learning new things and sort of enriching your imagination. That's really what a bountiful life is. So,
and never being done. Today I'm particularly thrilled to immerse myself in the world of foraging, exploring the abundance of nature, the joy of discovering wild edibles, and the positive impact of this age-old practice on our well-being and environment. I myself am a proud fifth generation of foragers in my family, which my nonna told my mum just the other day. In a modern age where our lives are intertwined with digital devices and the hustle and bustle of daily demands, this often leaves us feeling disconnected from nature, and the conversation around reconnecting with the land becomes a refreshing focal point. The yearning to break free from our busy schedules and rediscover the therapeutic embrace of nature is now more relevant than ever. As we navigate through this discussion, we'll unravel the rich tapestry of foraging, a practice deeply rooted in our connection with the land and the diverse offerings it provides. We'll delve into the fascinating insights of Peter Langlands, a seasoned forager with a wealth of experience. Peter's journey mirrors the ethos of Bountifull Media, celebrating the simplicity and purity of food sourced directly from nature, which he not only does for himself but for successful and innovative chefs across New Zealand, such as the award-winning Amersfield. He's on a mission to bring local and wild ingredients from various landscapes directly to your dining experience. I share a common passion for reconnecting with nature, a theme that resonates strongly in Peter's life. His extensive background from being a bird researcher to exploring diverse outdoor environments has fueled his love for foraging. Peter, like me, believes in the magic of getting back to the basics, finding joy in the simplicity of life on the land. Join us as we explore the wonders of foraging, its potential to transform our relationship with food, and its role in creating a bountiful life. So Peter, welcome to the Bountifull Podcast. It's a privilege to have this time with you today, and also to be here in the beautiful Banks Peninsula in New Zealand. For those of you listening, I have to tell you, I'm sitting in a harbour on a park bench with Peter doing this all remotely. It's definitely going to be one of the more unique podcasts I do in my life. So, Peter, welcome to the Bountifull Podcast.
Yeah, hey, no, thanks, Sian, for making the time available, and it's great to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Very exciting to be here. So what are you seeing?
Oh, well, Banks Peninsula, there's just a lot of diversity along the coastal margin, lots of different forested bush types, shoreline types. So yeah, it's just a beautiful landscape really. It's just sort of ever changing, and it's got so many folds and sort of hidden parts to it that there's always somewhere new to sort of explore. So it's, it always sort of, it's a dynamic sort of landscape.
So before we get started, do you have a vegetable garden?
Yes, we have got one, and yeah, grow quite a few vegetables over the summer, just mainly Māori potatoes and carrots, things like that really that, we don't forage. So yeah. So it's good to really, foraging plays a big part of my diet, but I do complement it with foods grown at home, and also just with recreational fishing as well, which is a big passion of mine, both salt and freshwater fishing.
I half expected you to tell me that the world is your vegetable garden.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, it's a huge diversity, and we can over 7,500 edible species in New Zealand. So I think this morning on our walk we've encountered probably about 70 different edible types. So you can actually reverse it and bring some of the species back into the wild, into your garden as well. And we do have a saying, eat the weeds, because a lot of what people clear from their garden is actually edible as well. So yeah, it's... And in New Zealand, especially here on Banks Peninsula, we're lucky because we've got the diversity of introduced and endemic native species. So we've got that really integrated ecology here.
What does that mean, integrated ecology?
Oh, just introduced species and native species existing side by side, really. So in many ways, we do get the best of both worlds. I'm not an environmental purist. I don't think we can necessarily look at introduced species as being inferior to our native species, and in many situations native and introduced species can grow side by side, and it does actually just increase the biodiversity of the number of species that you've got in an area. for example, not locally, but in Wellington, you've got old growth pine trees, and of course they're the engine room for the Wellington porcini hunting grounds. And if you didn't have the pines there, you wouldn't have the porcini mushrooms. And the native kaka, the parrot, they feed on the hoo-hoo grubs in the pine trees.
Yep.
So just next to where we're sitting here, there's a big eucalypt tree, and in the winter it will be in flower, and there'll just be dozens of bellbirds feeding on the eucalyptus flower. So they're a native bird, but they're using an introduced tree. So, so it's good, really. With Banks Peninsula is a particularly good area for foraging because you've got a lot of good little microclimates and sheltered areas. For many species, this is the southern limit of where they'll grow, like especially the kawa. Naturally, this is the southern limit, but with temperatures rising, it is actually starting to grow in Dunedin, Otapoti down that way now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can you provide me with a bit of an overview of what foraging actually is, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, foraging is just gathering any wild food other than fishing or hunting. Everything else that's gathered from the wild, pretty much, I'll call foraging. So it covers plants, mushrooms, and seaweed. So yeah, there's a big diversity of species out there. Shellfish, I guess, would also come under the term foraging. So I've got really good shellfish resources in New Zealand. Pretty world-class abundance of food, really.
And why do you think foraging has become so popular?
I think it is primarily that opportunity to reconnect with nature, and gives people a sense of purpose when they're in the outdoors, and you just sort of forget about your worries and you can just absorb yourself in relaxing in the natural world.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice adjunct to a lot of other outdoor activities. Like kayaking or fishing or mountain biking even. You can just always take a backpack, have a few containers and a pair of scissors, and always collect some foraged foods.
Do you want to show us what you've got in your pocket?
Oh yeah, I've just got some fern koru here, just from 2 different types of fern. So that's from the kio fern. There's a koru, and we've got 3 of those. And we've also got a pico fern koru. Actually, I've got a third species here too. We've got a shining spleenwort fern koru. So we've got 3 different types of koru from 3 different types of fern.
There you go.
Yeah.
Look at that. Brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, the koru are edible. Out of about 350 species of fern in New Zealand, we've only got about a dozen edible species though. So quite a few ferns are toxic. And then basically just steam them and cook them like asparagus. So just sort of take the hairs off it, and you've got a beautiful bright green. And just steam it, and
there you go.
Really nice, yeah.
And Peter's going to try deep fried tempura koru.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one before actually, but I'll give it a go.
So you've kind of said what we can forage. Out of curiosity, how much do you think you save off your grocery bill from foraging?
Probably nothing really, because I just end up spending more money on more expensive luxury foods.
That was the wrong answer, but we'll leave it in there.
Yeah, well, no, it just means I've got more money just to buy, like I like eating really high quality sardines and just sort of condiments and seasonings, and so yeah, actually do spend. I don't really do it from the point of view of the prepper side of things or like survivalist side of using it as a way of saving money, more just for nutritional density of wild foods and for the health benefits primarily.
Yeah.
That's a really big part for me, and also just for the diversity of flavours. And yeah, just the satisfaction from going out and getting something, and at the end of the day you can sort of recreate a meal that allows you to bring back memories from the day.
Yeah.
So it's a really big part of it.
What would you say sparked your interest in foraging?
Probably just family trips up into the high country and high country lakes, and my father was a really keen trout fisherman, so used to spend a lot of time around lakes, and lake margins are really good for foraging. A lot of wild mint, gooseberries, wild apples, so yeah, really big diversity. So it was really a family sort of experience. And I started ornithology or bird watching at about the age of 10, and spent a lot of time in the outdoors, different environments, also forest and bird when I was young. So we used to go on bus trips to different areas as well, and would often come across lots of different plants, and sometimes someone would point 1 or 2 out as being edible, and just being young and curious, you give it a go. So yeah, eating tree fuchsia berries when I was young, and horopedo which is a good trick to pull on someone because it's just so hot.
Yeah.
It's a real sort of taste bud destroyer, Horapedo. It's full on.
Yeah.
So just a lot of opportunities there.
And then you have a background as a bird researcher. How did you transition from being a bird researcher into being a professional forager?
Just having a change of scene really, and I worked pretty full on for 6 years in a fairly isolated area doing intensive bird research. And I found it really interesting and rewarding, but really just to be able to freelance and do what I wanted and where I wanted really was what foraging allowed, rather than being tied into doing any set research work in a certain area. So I got to travel and do some bird research and foraging at the same time in New Zealand.
Yep.
So I did work up in the north, throughout the North Island and quite a few places in the South Island as well. A certain level of frustration with government departments and how they operate with research as well. So foraging really just sort of allowed me some time to sort of chill out really and just do something where there was a lot of interest. And I could certainly see that it was taking off. So it sort of just fell into place really.
What else from your background is important for people to know? Like, I know you're kind of a bit of an angler and you've done fly fishing and you've spent a lot of time with the Department of Conservation. Is there any other background you want to share?
Studied at Canterbury University and did master's level papers there. So having a science background, especially in zoology, is really important because it gives you those skills for accurately identifying things. And just the whole process of identification is really crucial, of course, to foraging. And now on top of that, I've got the layers of understanding the habitats and all the environments. So you can read a lot of environmental cues. You can read where birds are, how birds are behaving. That can give you a good idea where you can go foraging for something. If there's a lot of keruru flying around, there's a good chance there's going to be some trees with ripe fruit nearby. If you see the oyster catchers out on mud flats like we've got in front of us here, feeding in a certain area, you'll know that would be a good area to go and get cockles at low tide. So you can read a lot of cues really from the environment.
Yep, nice. What would you say are some of the experiences that have shaped you either in childhood or in life?
Well, really just the love of the outdoors, just from a young age, and it's just sort of addicted really to the outdoors. So it's as simple as that. I do enjoy being in the city and doing the diversity of things in the city, but really always thinking when I'm in a city about where next I'm going to be escaping out of the city just to go somewhere. And so it's pretty... I had a friend who used to live in New Zealand from the UK, Martin, and he really sparked my interest in foraging as well. He was a very skilled forager, but he's gone back to the UK now. So it's of course people in like Vaughan Mabe and some of the chefs have really helped drive my passion for foraging as well. I've met a few people over the years who are keen foragers, so it sort of rubs off really. Once you're into it, it's just sort of like a giant sort of treasure hunt really.
Yeah, we've definitely found some treasures today.
Yeah. So it's like geocaching or going on a treasure hunt, but you've got a purpose.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting.
How important do you think it is to have purpose in life?
I think it's really a life force. You hear a lot of stories of people who retire from the job they've been doing all their lives and then get a chronic illness or die pretty soon after retiring. So I think it's important to keep your mind really active and to have a natural sense of curiosity. It's just a real driving force, and foraging's ideal for that. Even though I've been doing it professionally for about 8 years now, every week I'm still becoming aware of 4 or 5 new species to forage. Yep. So really on that frontier, just constantly discovering new things and then new ways of preparing things with new people, different contexts. So it's a really dynamic sort of lifelong interest really.
Yeah. How has your academic background in the natural sciences influenced your approach to identifying and recording foraged foods?
It has been pretty important. I just sort of realised the importance of building up scientific observations So I use iNaturalist quite a lot, which is a citizen science project where people can log on their observations of anything, plants, animals, fungi, the whole spectrum. And you can log your observations there, and then people, according to their history within that group, they'll have a certain level of expertise and they can identify species, and then things get identified and then they get recorded in a database that can be used to produce distribution maps of anything in New Zealand, any sort of biota. So it's a really good way of recording where you find wild foods with a sense of purpose. Also just in plants and animals as well. It's a really good database, and I found it quite useful in the book that I'm working on for doing distribution, studying the distribution of a lot of wild foods in New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's also been used to track invasive species in New Zealand like myrtle rust, and it will probably be used for tracking the spread of golden clams.
Yeah.
Yep.
Golden clams?
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, they're an invasive clam from Asia that's just turned up in the upper North Island. So we're now quite concerned that they'll spread through New Zealand and potentially have some changes or create some changes to freshwater systems. Yeah.
So I was joking with you about before that I never catch fish in lakes around here. And so I know that you're a big fan of fishing. And so what's your advice for actually catching a trout in Lake Dunstan?
It's a great lake for fishing. There's a lot of trout. It does require a certain level of perseverance. I would generally move around though. If I haven't caught a fish at a certain spot within 15 minutes, I go and try a new location. It might only be 50 or 100 metres away. It's nice to go out on a rocky point where you've got close proximity to deep water, close to shore. The edge of weed beds, so where you've got an area of sand and then it goes into the weed. So trout like cruising along edge environments, like us with foraging. Edge environments are really good for finding food. You fishing around dawn or dusk are really good times. That's when the trout are most actively feeding on lake margins normally. So yeah, fishing around dusk. Using pretty light lines, so trout have got good eyesight, so you want to make sure that you're using fairly light nylon, low diameter, and also you want to retrieve your lure quite slowly and deep, and if you feel anything odd, just lift the rod up to hook the fish, because sometimes they can be pretty subtle when they take. Also, yeah, the type of lure, generally use a fairly naturally coloured lure, like a black, brown or green coloured lure most of the year, something that's going to imitate the fish's food source. When you're retrieving it, you don't want to retrieve it any faster than a walking speed, so quite a slow retrieve. Yeah. So that's the key, yeah, for something like that. Yeah. So that's the key for trout fishing, yeah. But yeah.
Give it a go. I'll let you know if I catch a fish finally after 3 years.
But also, if you haven't caught a fish on a certain lure within sort of half an hour or so, change that lure as well. Yeah. So change locations, change the lure. Look for areas where there's water inflowing into a lake, and then you generally do want to be fishing in deeper water if you're spin or soft bait fishing. Generally, you'd want to be fishing in at least 2.5 to 3 metre water depths. Just so you don't snag up too much as well. Yeah. Yeah.
See, the trout or weed?
Trout or weed, but you know, because the trout hit pretty hard. Yeah,
when they hit.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about the environmental impact. I know that being a conservationist is a big area of interest for you. So what is the impact or the environmental impact on migration and immigration and those sorts of things on the land?
Yeah, well, we've got population increase in New Zealand's pretty rapid, and there's been a lot of changes in New Zealand in the last decade, really, with the population increasing quite significantly. I mean, the population in New Zealand's doubled in my lifetime, so at least doubled, actually. So, yeah, a lot more people, but there's also a lot more intense agricultural intensification as well. Not really a lot more diversity, but just intensification. So we start losing lots of edge environments. So yeah, there's certainly going to be some impacts there. Still a relatively sparsely populated country for our size in New Zealand. So I think if we get things right, there's still a lot of scope to do things well and develop good infrastructure in Aotearoa. Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to say on the environmental piece?
Well, the good thing is getting people out foraging is it makes people aware of the environment and just builds up that sort of sense of advocacy and environmental awareness. So hopefully we'll have more people aware and who are going to be more vocal through our political or public opinion processes on shaping how we manage our environment. I'm a big fan of the whitebait fishery because I think it gets a lot of people interacting with the freshwater environment, and we really want to keep that advocacy and that awareness and that utilisation of resources there. With foraging, there's generally not many instances where foragers are going to exhaust a resource. We're mainly eating invasive weeds, so it's not too much of a problem. Some of the seaweeds will probably need to be managed with some regulations on the quantities that people can take.
Yeah.
But overall, foraging can be scaled up in New Zealand as long as we've got good environmental quality.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things we can do is stop the use of sprays. The amount of spraying activity seems to be over the top in a lot of areas, and just let things naturally regrow. Unless there's a major sort of fire risk hazard in an area, I think it's really good in a lot of cases just to let the weeds sort of reach their own equilibrium, and then we get more pollination and potentially a lot more sort of honey production from bees as well.
Yeah.
So it'd be really good to see a lot less spraying activity and just I think readjusting our minds to a more diverse sort of verge environment.
Yeah. So have you foraged anywhere else in the world?
I've done a little bit of foraging in Sydney, yeah. Yep. So I'm pretty keen to get over to Tasmania maybe next winter and have a look through Tasmania. There's a similar sort of climate to New Zealand, and I'm not really a big international traveller, so Australia though does spark my curiosity, and it would be good to have a look through Tasmania because there's just the similarities really.
I've been there. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit more details about the database work that you're working on?
Recorded in a database all the species that I found. So it's about 7,500 species in it, and I'm just going to do a few edits and streamline it a bit and then make it publicly available at a certain level. So we're working on that at the moment. It's mainly been used as a research tool for a book that I've just finished writing for penguin, covering the main 250 forageable species in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But obviously there's much more than that. So it's really just a sort of personal thing really, just to sort of record just to keep an inventory really of species that are out there, and also to keep an idea on where things are distributed, but certainly make it publicly available as I go on with workshops and seminars. It could be a good base tool for people to work from.
And speaking of those workshops, what are some of the common misconceptions about foraged foods that you like to educate people on?
Yeah, well, there's not too many, but a lot of foods are edible. I think people are really cautious. If you can really sort of familiarise yourself with the poisonous species that are out there, that's a good starting point, just to be aware of the really deadly poisonous species to avoid. Especially with plants, you want to be aware of certain plant groups to be aware of that are quite toxic, but with mushrooms, of course, that's a really key area. A lot of people have they think there's sort of generalised rules about what you can and can't forage into mushrooms, but it's not like that at all. It's very much on a case-by-case basis, so there's no generalities with mushrooms, and there's as we say, not much room for error. Misconceptions, well, not really that many, but I think, I'm not really aware of really that many misconceptions. Most people come to it with a fairly sort of open mind, really, and they're sort of starting from a pretty sort of entry level.
I think one of my most profound memories as a child was, I told you that we lived on a farm in the north of Auckland, and we had a reserve off the back of our farm that had about 3 waterfalls. And I remember this guy knocked at the door and he was frothing at his mouth, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, what's wrong with the guy, Daddy? And he's like, I think he's eaten something that he shouldn't. And so he'd been eating magic mushrooms that he found, and obviously they were poisonous. And so, he had to go to hospital. He was not in a good way. And I think maybe that memory of some foods are good to forage and other foods are not. You really kind of do need to know what you're doing, or you need to learn or get advice from someone like yourself.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a pretty scary encounter for sure.
Yep.
The main thing is, I think, the advice I give is for people just to go one species at a time. Just learn one new species, and you've got a whole lifetime of opportunity just to learn a new species each week. During your life, you'll run out of time, basically. Yep. But so there's just build up confidence with one species, and just slowly build up the repertoire of species you're happy to forage. Certainly, just don't go and gun ho into it, because you could really sort of trip up pretty quickly. You don't want to be frothing at the mouth, that's for sure. It's never a good sign.
How do you think foraging contributes to building connection with nature and also within individuals and communities?
Oh, yeah, it's got a huge scope to develop for sure, yeah. On an individual level, it's really good for relaxation. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more people foraging as communities and people running foraging courses around New Zealand. So since I started up about 8 years ago, it's really proliferated around the country now. So yeah, there's more and more people doing it. So it's a great thing. And, I think there's still a lot more potential to forage than people realise at the moment. And I actually really don't often see people out when I'm foraging. So it's really still a relatively sort of solitary pursuit if I'm not doing a course or something. So yeah, but it is a good way to get the kids out as well and get the kids thinking about what they're doing in the outdoors.
Yep.
And just to build up skills with thinking about things and identification. Yep. So it's a really good skill-based way of learning.
What are some of the challenges you think you've come across being a professional forager?
Yeah, probably just the amount of spraying activity there is really, and thinking about soil health is really important. Thinking about environmental health where I'm foraging quite a lot. The climate really is a big challenge. Like if we get really dry years, especially on Banks Peninsula, it really will knock down the availability of what we can forage. But we can still go diving, get things in the sea, or you've always got microclimates areas. There's about 600 springs on Banks Peninsula, so there's a lot of sort of little oases around Banks Peninsula where we can forage even in really dry years. There's not really a lot of challenges really, probably just travel and time. But as you become more knowledgeable about foraging, you end up foraging more and more close to home.
Yep.
So you don't need to travel as far to find as many things when you've got the knowledge. But for foraging seaweeds, being based in Otatahi, Christchurch here, I generally travel about an hour to go somewhere where there's really good seaweed foraging.
Yep. Can you tell me a little bit more about your collaborations with chefs and working with them and being a professional forager? Because that would be really fascinating.
Yeah, well, I did it quite intensively about 5 years ago. Sort of slowed down with it in the last few years, working more towards educational side and tours. But it does really give chefs really want to point a difference with their menus, just to put something different that someone else isn't providing. Is a really good professional things for chefs to do. Working at Amersfield really at the sort of top level gave me a full appreciation of how wild foods can be utilised. And so that was a really eye-opening experience. I'm keen to get back working with chefs more now. I've had a little bit of a break from it for the last couple of years, but it's good because I can come back to it with a refreshed sort of viewpoint. And COVID also did knock it back quite a bit. A lot of people were pretty stressed and they didn't really want to get too creative. Was a period where people were more in survival mode and they wanted clear, regular supply lines of regular product. And foraging, of course, is more suited towards places that have a menu where they're sort of changing it according to what's around. Yep. And those generally do tend to be more the sort of upper level restaurants that do that type of menu.
Yep.
I've quite a few chefs around New Zealand I know well, and certainly I've worked in with over the years, and I'm happy to work in with them again and get back into developing some really good recipe ideas. Yeah.
And how does that collaboration work? Do you go like, hey, here's a fern, or like, here's pineapple weed, this is what it tastes like maybe it'd go well with like duck or something? How does that sort of process or ideation work?
Yeah, well, it works like that. Some of the chefs are pretty knowledgeable from their backgrounds overseas, and they've come to New Zealand and they know sort of what they're after already, and they know reasonably well how it can be used. But certainly I think there's a huge scope to proactively go to chefs and give them some ideas how to use the ingredients. I haven't really done that much in the last couple of years, just because I've slowed down a little bit with it, just because I'm working on a few other projects. But certainly, keen to get back into it and work more with chefs, just as the industry sort of starts to rebuild itself. So it's very much a sort of timing issue, really. Yeah.
So moving on, what does a bountiful life look like for you?
Well, just having a diversity of activities to do. I'm lucky my partner's Jackie is really keen on foraging, and she does a lot of really nice flavourful meals using foraged ingredients, and she's got her own media stream, and she's built up a bit of a following. Having really healthy sustenance, healthy food, having a good relationship, just having the basic sort of security of life, having a nice house, or a pretty basic house, but it does the job, and having the ability to travel and good health, and then just having a diversity of interests, really, where you can sort of shape what you do according to the opportunities and the timing. That's to me what a bountiful life is, and just of course constantly learning new things and sort of enriching your imagination. That's really what a bountiful life is. So,
and never being done. What do you think is driving people's desire to get back to nature and be one with the land, and more in touch with the food that they're eating, those sorts of things?
I think you hit the nail on the head with the intro. It's just that sort of drive to get some distance from digital lives, and lives where the speed of life is really sped up through digital media. People just want to relax and do things at a slower pace and just sort of engage their senses in a sort of diverse environment, really. I think that's a massive part of it. To be honest, I probably enjoyed looking at photos more 20 or 30 years ago, when a photo was something quite special. Someone had paid for a photo to be taken, for it to be developed, for it to be put in a book. Whereas now I think we've got such a massive digital proliferation, as it's really sort of numbed down people's senses, and you can almost sort of get digitally drunk on too much media, really.
Yeah.
So getting out foraging really allows people an escape from that sort of sensory overload, really.
Maybe an unripe kawa berry will be the remedy for them to get their senses back.
Yeah, it certainly knocks you back into place, yeah.
So we're going to do a quick fire round now. We're
Okay,
nearly done.
Yep, cool.
What, in your opinion, is the most underrated fruit or vegetable?
Probably the kawa fruit, actually. I reckon it's pretty cool. Yeah, I really rate it up there taste-wise, because it's got a real nice sweetness and a real heat to it as well.
Kind of is a cross between a honeydew melon and a pawpaw, right?
Yeah.
In terms of flavour?
Yeah, no, it's a real intense taste sensation.
And what's your favourite way to have it?
Just to eat them just as they are, actually, or just to squash them on top of some ice cream. It's pretty good.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
What's your favourite cocktail?
Probably wild spearmint, actually. Favourite cocktail would be finger limes and gin.
Oh.
So that's the one. Finger limes and gin's pretty up there.
Finger limes, pretty good.
Yeah, so I have the odd cocktail every now and then, but yeah, it's just a few glasses of red wine each week, pretty much. Yeah.
What's the worst meal your parents ever made you eat?
Oh yeah, it was a fish fillet that had accidentally been cooked in dishwashing liquid and not cooking oil. I wasn't made to eat it though. That one went back to the kitchen. So my mother made a genuine mistake with that.
Most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Probably just decide to head out to the Chatham Islands and do some bird surveys. So I did that pretty much with about a day's notice. When I was fisheries observing, we used to head out to sea pretty much and do last minute things. So jumping from a little aluminium dinghy launched off the back of a yacht 35 miles off the Fiordland coast, and then jumping onto the deck of a Japanese fishing boat at 3 a.m. was pretty, it was pretty hair-raising, but we did it. And,
sounds terrifying.
And it was terrifying, but it was before all the health and safety regulations now.
Right. So
yeah, that was a last-minute trip on, but certainly been on a fishing boat off Fiordland and just watching the sunrise over the Alps is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one word that describes your life?
Crazy and chaotic. It's 2 words, but probably pretty crazy. Cyclical. I mean, I go in cycles of interest, so yeah, sort of chaotic.
Love it. And our biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
Probably just sort of changing to a pretty healthy lifestyle, really, and just deciding to cut back on alcohol's pretty major, really. And so that's been quite a big change. Just becoming aware of just having a healthier diet and a healthier lifestyle.
Yep. So looking ahead now, what's a dream for you with the work that you're doing in the life that you're living?
Just probably like what you're doing, actually, just to travel around Aotearoa and meet different people and tell different stories and just build up that sort of engagement and awareness. And yeah, I'd really like to do that, and try to tie people together who are working in the outdoor conservation community and just work together as projects, and just to work within media to lift environmental awareness. So I've worked quite a bit with endangered birds, but also I think definitely with foraging there's a huge scope to build up environmental awareness in a really applied sort of way, and also with just looking after our waters and our land, really. And yeah.
If there's one environmental message you have for the Bountifull followers, what would it be?
Yeah, probably just to try and live locally as much as possible, to be honest. I think that's going to be one of the keys in the short term anyway, just try to avoid getting sucked into the world of materialism, really.
There you go, heard it here first. And final one is, what's your best or biggest piece of foraging advice for those people that are really fascinated by foraging or want to start doing it themselves?
Yeah, I'll get stuck into it straight away, really. And don't be shy, don't be scared of the poisonous species. So just learn one species at a time, and there's a huge amount of information out there. So look, the sooner you start on it, the more rewarding it's going to be. So I wouldn't put it off to tomorrow, and I'd start today.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing your incredible insights into the world of foraging on the Bountifull Podcast. It's been a delightful journey exploring the richness of nature and the abundance it offers. For our audience keen to delve deeper into Peter's foraging adventures, you can find more details and connect with him on Instagram, and I've left these details in the show notes below. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow and subscribe for more captivating discussions. Our season is very exciting and is filled with fascinating guests and insights that you won't want to miss. Thanks, Peter, for coming on the Bountifull Podcast.
Yeah. Hey, thanks again for the opportunity. It's been a great day to get out and explore.